with humanity standing at the crossroad is facing severe tests. Today, I'm going to talk about wealth gap. The gap between rich and poor has always existed objectively, and a certain reasonable solution of the gap between rich and poor has an important and positive effect on the operation of the society. The problems of the gap between rich and poor are becoming more serious as a boon of COVID-19. Like the uneven distribution of medical resources, and the poor cannot get timely assistance. This situation is very urgent, so we'll find solutions of the issues from two aspects, which are individual and the government. Moreover, a series of problems such as potential crimes and other social hazards can be solved to achieve the goal of making the country more stable. Okay, first, for individuals, the loss of the right to education caused by the gap between rich and poor will trigger a vicious circle of poverty towards poverty. When poor people are still trying to meet their material needs, wealthy people spend more on spiritual needs. A Nobs made a comparison of the cost priority between developed countries and developing countries. Though residents of developing countries tend to consider for their children's education quality in the first place, people spend less on education than rich people spend on pets and other aspects of entertainment. Moreover, a high level of education is identified as the best way to get rid of poverty and live independently. Because of that, the poor have little access to higher education compared to the rich. The lack of higher diplomas will make it difficult for the poor to find high-paying jobs when they are employed. The results in the poor being unable to become rich and exacerbating the wealth gap between rich and poor. Tracing the source of wealth gap, unequal educational resources seems to be one of the main factors, so that people should combat the gap in education. Besides, to achieve the equality of educational resources, it's inseparable from the help of government and the rich. Survey data shows that the richest 20% of the world has nearly 80% of the rich. Thus, it can be seen that the gap between the rich and poor is considerable. But the rich are unaware of their problem, that they gain a lot with little sweets, while the poor labor hard to little avail. Since the rich are aware of their problems, they should help the poor narrow down the gap between the rich and poor. The better way to help them is that the government levies more taxes on the rich and evenly allocates this money to the poor who want to help themselves, because it all avoids the situation where no rich are willing to fund the poor autonomously. This also ensures that some people have more opportunities to gradually get out of poverty status, since the quality of education of their children can be guaranteed further. The next result is that rich need to be aware of the problems caused by the wealth gap and work together with the government to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. It's undeniable that rich may continue to exploit their employees who might be the poor or someone not so rich if the government requires the rich to pay more taxes. Based on that, the rich can make up for their losses in the government from the poor. Therefore, the government should also establish relevant laws, such as if the rich are found to exploit the poor, they will lose all their property in this job and be kept by the government to protect the poor. And the implementation of this law must be supervised by relevant departments at the same time so that it can be strictly enforced. Under the premise of mutual supervision of the government, relevant departments and the rich, the balance between the poor and the rich can be achieved while avoiding some possible troubles.